Lance Barber is back as George in Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, Episode 12. Despite George's death and young Sheldon, Chuck Lorre, Stephen Holland, and Steve Malero have found a way to bring back the beloved character. The rest of his Texas-based family have all appeared in Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, albeit in recurring roles as the spin-off sequel shifts the focus on the McAllisters. That being said, as part of the show delving into Georgie's struggles, which were previously established in The Big Bang Theory, young Sheldon's follow-up is bringing back Barber for George's emotional return. The storyline, which saw a bedridden Georgie visited by his dead dad, was inspired by similar dreams that series co-creator Chuck Lorre has had of his own father. Over breakfast in the Cooper family kitchen, we saw George tease his son for taking his sick day. But in a subsequent scene, Georgie confronted his dad and told him that he doesn't want to work himself into the ground and miss out on being there when Cece has kids of her own. "I get that," Senior responded. He then placed his hand on Georgie's shoulder and proclaimed, "I did a good job raising you," like the proud Papa Bear he always was. His visit had a compelling enough reason. During the first dream scene, Georgie was working through his guilt about not working while he was sick, and George Sr. chastised him for being weak enough to take time off for illness. However, the scene appeared to be reminiscent of Georgie's final encounter with his father prior to George Sr.'s passing. Unaware that they would never see him again, the entire family bid him farewell in the kitchen that fateful morning in young Sheldon Season 7, Episode 12. It is doubly noteworthy because that is precisely where Georgie saw his father in the dream. He seemed to be processing not only his own emotions over missing work, but also his sentiments regarding the death of his father. Georgie was reluctant to take time off due to illness since he thought that since his father never did, a true man shouldn't either. Georgie must have known, even if he maintained that Connor was mistaken when he claimed that George Sr.'s early death was caused by overworking. Otherwise, why did I jump during that zombie sequence? Though there are countless ways to interpret such dreams, I believe the most profound one is that in order for Georgie to become the husband and parent he desires, he must outgrow his need for his father's approval. Georgie's skills and achievements were constantly overshadowed by Sheldon's genius. His only source of attention was his excessive physical exertion as a football player. Georgie ran the risk of losing his father's approval from beyond the grave by taking care of himself when he was sick, which went against his father's instructions. However, he must let go in order to be effective in his life. Although Connor has been in the background for the past few episodes, he has a particular bond with Georgie that dates back to Georgie's patience with him during a road trip in Episode 7 of Season 1 of George and Mandy's First Marriage. However, he made up for it in Typhoid Georgie. For Georgie, Connor was a successful nurse. When Georgie attempted to return to work, although he was still unwell, he also confronted him. Jim most likely would have sent him home, but Connor's insistence that Georgie stay at home was crucial to his character. One of the jokes on Typhoid Georgie was that Connor, who was frequently passive, kept answering "okay," while Georgie insisted he had no idea what he was talking about. Even though he largely learned it from Golden Girls, it was a huge thing to him to prevent Georgie from making his condition worse by coming to work sick. Georgie's story is set in the early 1990s, as I recall much of the period. However, in Season 1, Episode 12 of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, I nearly forgot. Additionally, all of his symptoms were COVID symptoms, which were non-existent at the time. Nevertheless, in our post-COVID world, the argument about whether or not to work while ill and people's reluctance to catch something from Georgie were highly relatable. This tale was really relatable because no one wants to get sick because of someone else, whether it's COVID or a simple cold. I feel like I have to play Guess Why Georgie and Mandy eventually break up after every episode of Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage. The majority of the early episodes implied that financial difficulties were the cause, but following Mandy's time as a weather replacement, I'm not so sure. Reporting on the local news, Mandy was happier and more fulfilled than she had been in months. She clearly has to figure out how to go back to her original job path so she won't be angry at Georgie and Sissy for stealing her dream. Nevertheless, I can't help but worry that Mandy and Georgie will eventually become irreconcilably estranged due to her desire to resume covering the weather. Mandy was more concerned with performing well at work than with embarrassing herself. Her fear that Georgie wouldn't want to leave and she would land a job in Houston seemed incredibly precise. I was also aware that George Sr. was planning to relocate to Houston just prior to his deadly heart attack. She may be correct that Georgie won't want to leave if she receives a job offer in Houston, but it won't be because he doesn't want to be apart from Mary and Missy. That could be a contributing factor, but I'm willing to wager that Georgie has a superstitious notion that, given the circumstances surrounding his father's death, consenting to travel to Houston will be lethal.